Okay, people. So I'm here with Ryan Dowling, who is the director of the really interesting documentary, right? Duality, a graffiti story. Ryan, thank you very much for your time, man. Really appreciate it. And really
Yeah.
enjoyed the documentary.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. And I know there's a bit of a time difference from the U.S. and England, but yeah, it's good to be here.
Hey, no worries at all. No worries at all, man. Um, Duality, that this is your feature documentary debut, right?
That's correct. Yep, that's my first feature.
Like, what made you choose street art, graffiti? How did this come to be, as it were?
Sure. I wouldn't really say I chose it. I kind of just fell into it more so. I knew one of the artists in the film, Duel. I knew more on a personal level, and just really admired his artwork and stuff like that. And really just went out to film what was going to be a short piece on him, and did an interview with him, and filmed with him for a week or so. And he just the way he spoke, in the interview, the things he was saying, just were just profound enough where I was like, this is a kind of a bigger story. And just kind of seeing how people interacted with him, seeing him on the street, stuff like that. Um, he's very well known, and um, people knew of him when they obviously didn't know his face, but they could recognize his artwork when he was out in the city, painting and stuff like that. And it was almost like seeing a celebrity or something like that. So
Mm.
just based on that um, initial filming session that I had with him, I kind of from there conceptualized more of what I was like. This could be a feature and could be longer, and um, so yeah, it started with that, and then it kind of just grew from there. And Duel introduced me to this artist, and I kind of just took it one step at a time. Interviewed another guy, and then a year later, I interviewed 6 or 7 different artists, and had this story that we were able to cut into a feature doc.
Nice, because
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting with the different people you spoke to, because everyone had a different style. Which then you know what I mean, you're looking at one person doing stuff, and then you see this completely different style. And I think you sometimes will think of graffiti, street art as one thing, but you see someone do something complete. I think it might have been God, who was the one that did I think it might have been Nevs.
Yeah, never.
Mears,
Yeah.
sorry, Mears.
Oh, mirrors. Yeah, yeah.
I think it might have been Mears that did the portraits. Was it Mears with doing the portraits?
Yeah, he's done some portraits. He's done like the Joker, and other characters like that. Never has done a lot of sports figures. Um,
It was. I think it was Nevis then, because it was
okay,
just
yeah.
like there was a Kobe, a LeBron. There was like the
Uh-huh.
film stuff, which you're looking at, if you're like, that ain't good. Like, what if, right? Is that a photo? Like, it looks so realistic, and so you're seeing these different styles, and it's so interesting, and just the different everyone's different take on the work and doing it was so interesting. Like when Jewel put you in contact with people, was it like an intention to find people with like such different styles to come together for the documentary, or did it just happen that way?
A little bit of both, I would say. I definitely wanted to kind of show, I mean, because I learned so much, after I started following these guys and interviewing them, getting footage of them. and I learned so much, and I knew that I wanted this film to be appealing to everyone, not just, people who like graffiti and like street art. And so I wanted to kind of get a diverse roster that kind of shows, the difference between graffiti and street art, um, and the different types of lettering, and basically just the graffiti and street art world as a whole, and really explain all the differences and the nuances between each of the kind of like the subgenres of each art, basically.
Mm.
Um, and so yeah, it kind of, yeah, like I said, it was a little bit of both. Um, I sought out some, and then some just kind of fell into my lap that way. So yeah.
Okay, okay. Now, do you like what's your jam with all of this? What kind of stuff resonates the most with you?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. As far as like art forms
Mm.
or
Yeah, the different styles of like street art and graffiti and just all of that kind of stuff.
yeah, I would say, I mean, the coolest, I mean, me personally, I think the wild style, the graffiti wild style, like the very intricate, interwoven type of lettering, um, that graffiti writers do, I think was kind of the coolest for me. And it was kind of the, yeah, it was cool to see them paint.
Mm.
Especially Sloke and Mears doing the big, very intricate wild style pieces that you see in the film.
Yeah.
Um, and then obviously the big, huge murals that Duel is doing, um, and Never's doing with the portraits, and and then Jabber doing with his icon, his Jabber
Mm.
head. So there's a bunch of kind of different varieties in there, and it's hard to pick one, like who's your favorite kid, but yeah, I think the wild style kind of stuck out to me the most, for sure. It's kind of
Okay.
that pinnacle of graffiti, I think.
Mm.
Um, People work their way up to, you know, the wild style stuff. They start out with throw ups and bubble letters and kind of progress, because it is, I think, the more like the most complicated type of lettering that they do.
Yeah, it was just watching them do it. That was the craziest thing because it's just like, wait, what did you just do there? You know what I mean? And like, I didn't because when you look at it, it you don't really see lines or things like that. It's just all kind of just this thing that just is there being. And it was just, I think Sloke was showing a little kid. Like he was a little kid came over and was like, "Oh, can you sign my book?" And blah blah blah. And just that
Yeah.
interaction was crazy. But then he was just like, "Hey, take the can, fill in that for me." And then it was just like, "Yo, just turn the nozzle like that, and you get that effect." I'm just like, "This is insane." I didn't know that's what you like. You turn the can and you get this effect, and you just like that just blew me away.
Yeah,
It was
yeah. No,
so
there's yeah, they have tons of different caps that do all kinds of different patterns and stuff like that. But I mean, can control, as they say, and really mastering precision is what they're really good at. And yeah, I mean, when you watch the wild style being created, it's almost like they're just kind of like spraying a bunch of random lines, and then at the very end, it's just like bam, and it all comes together.
yeah.
So it's interesting to watch for sure.
Mm. Now, growing up, like, what was your kind of viewpoint on, graffiti and art as a kid, you know?
That's a that's a good question, because I asked that to a lot of people and I got a lot of different responses. As a kid, I mean, I grew up in Houston, um, and I was kind of more out, in the suburbs. So graffiti really wasn't too prevalent out there.
Mm.
You kind of had to go into the city to get more of that. Um, so I think, I it's a tough one, because I mean, a lot of people say, it's vandalism, and it defaces properties and stuff like that. And I think there can be that component. Um, and there can be the gang component, which I know is related to a lot of it. Um, but I think the perception's changed a lot, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's it's evolved. And so yeah, I really enjoy it. I mean, now I absolutely love it. Everywhere I go, I can't help but to notice, oh, look at that mural, or oh, look at that piece right there, or oh, there's a jabberhead. I'm
Mm.
driving in Texas and I see a train pass by and I see a jabberhead go by, and I know he's you know on the West Coast. So um, yeah, the perception's changed a lot. Um, it might have not been so good when growing up, but now I absolutely love it. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Like now, there's like courses, you know what I mean? Learn how to graffiti and we're in London. I believe it's near. I always forget if it's near Waterloo or London Bridge, but there's like old like train tunnels, and they've kind of set this whole kind of long stretch apart for graffiti. And they do graffiti classes there, and all of that kind of stuff. So there definitely wasn't it was not that back in the day. Growing up, you know what I mean? There's no graffiti classes. If you were caught with a can, you know what I mean? That's it. People are treating you a lot differently. So it's
For sure.
interesting that evolution, seeing graffiti now in a museum and a gallery and that kind of stuff. It's just like, huh, interesting.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I mean, you look back in the 80s and the 90s, and even the early 2000s, and even up till recently, I think you learned on the street. That's where these guys learned. They learned
Mm.
on the streets, and they were able to eventually, become good enough to start, painting kind of professionally, I would say, for, brands and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's definitely evolved and changed a lot, and people people look at it as a profession more now. So yeah, the education is there more. There's more resources to do it. You see legal walls and what you call permission walls popping up more, where you can go and paint, legally. You're not committing a crime, and you can still, do graffiti and tag stuff like that. Um, so yeah, the opportunity is definitely there a lot more today.
Yeah, I was in Berlin a few years back, and there's old parts. I think it's old parts of the Berlin Wall, and they're kind of it's put aside for graffiti, and there's all like different types of graffiti all over these big bits of wall that just you can go and look at, and that was interesting.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I've
But
I've seen yeah, go ahead.
oh, no, 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 you man.
Oh, I know Banksy did something there. I think it was in one of his films. But yeah, I mean that's huge concrete slabs to make all kinds of different art pieces on.
Mm,
It's the world's canvas, as they would say. So it's
yeah,
everywhere, it's out in the streets, it's.
yeah. I kind of because I think growing up, like loads of people, were tagging. Like everyone's got a little tag, and
Mhm.
it's like I kind of think graffiti is a bit like American football, right? Where if the first thing you see is just a back and forth crazy game, finishes like 40-42 or something like that, and it's just like, yo, this was insane. Like, boom. So you're gonna be in it. But if the first game you see is just is won by a field goal, that's the only point scored. You're gonna be like, there's so many stops and starts. Like, I don't know if I dig this thing. So it's just like if the first bit of graffiti you see is this incredible piece, you could get hooked. You can see it for the art and the visual creation it is. But if the first thing you see is just some, like just poorly done like thing, you might just be like, ah, they've defaced that wall. Wow, what, that's rubbish. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, no doubt. And that was actually a question that got up uh, during a screening we had when oh God. So I forgot what I was gonna say.
It's around
Totally
the
went
whole
blank.
5 points kind of thing.
Yeah. Man, what was I gonna say? Totally went blank there. Um, I had a really good point I was gonna bring up. Um, okay, yes. So the competition has changed a lot, right?
Mm,
So it's like it is like a sport, like you're saying. So like I said, back in the 80s, 90s, when graffiti was coming up in Philly and New York and these cities, obviously it was drastically different in what you saw back then. And obviously, through the years, through competition and people wanting to get better and wanting more visibility, wanting to get their work out there, um, it's evolved. And so you're seeing nicer pieces. You're seeing better pieces of art. You're seeing bigger murals. You're seeing more intricate murals. You're seeing graffiti writers really take risks and, put their tags in very public spots and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, the competition field is there more, kind of like sports, like you were saying. Like it's evolved so much for sure, and it keeps getting better.
yeah, I thought it was really interesting the perspective that we got from Sloke and Jewel in the documentary around doing the corporate pieces and the burnout and like just the fact that you have stuff in galleries, but people are, claiming to be, street artists when they've never been on the street, right? And it's that kind of, now it's evolved into that, which I think we've seen in so many other kind of forms of creativity. Like when you look at early rap, right? I just remember over here, there's a point I was out every single night doing stuff for different labels and stuff like that. And you'd go to like the rap battles, like the open mics, and you'd see a lot of the same people over and over again. And then suddenly someone might come up somewhere and be like, oh yeah, I do this. And you've never seen them anywhere. Like they've never done open mics, but they managed to get some deal somewhere, you know? And it's just like it's that sort of thing. People want to jump over a lot of the stages, right, to get to the end point, but then it's just like you don't always see them there that long. I think it's the appreciation, you know what I mean, like when you've been out there grinding, you appreciate like that point you've got to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what they say is pretty fair. They spend years on the streets and yeah, I mean, someone could come along and just say I'm a street artist and start painting murals and getting marketing gigs for companies and sure they might be a painter and they might have decent work, but I guess the where they're coming from is they haven't put in the work on the streets, like really
Mm.
mastering certain principles of art, that come with practicing graffiti and doing it in a sense for free or just for the fun and the thrill of it. So yeah, yeah, I can see that kind of imposter syndrome type of thing starting to come out more and yeah, I mean it's a tough one because if you can produce good murals and you're a good painter and you can make good works for brands, then I mean what's even if you have never done graffiti, what's really stopping you? So
Mm. Yeah, it's an interesting one, I kind of think, but it's like one of those things where it's just like, surely you would just say you're a painter, right? Or a muralist. Like you wouldn't need to
right.
say, "Yeah, I've been on the streets, man. I've been doing this kind of." When you've never done, you'd be like, "Yo, I can draw." Here's my work. Look, do you want to hire me? Boom, cool. Like I don't have to make up this backstory to like be like, oh yeah, and I got good art. It's kind of weird.
No doubt. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And that's one thing I wanted to kind of define too is like the difference between, graffiti and street art, murals, gallery pieces. I wanted to really define it all and separate them as kind of their own separate little entities and art forms.
Mm,
And so people can understand it a little bit more because I don't, if people see a big mural, they might think it's graffiti when in reality, a business owner paid for that to be there.
yeah.
Um, and so I really just wanted to like bring awareness to it and help people understand it more. So, they might be able to tell like, oh wow, that actually is vandalism right there. He just painted over that guy's, you know, business name or whatever. Or oh, that's a huge, beautiful piece with a message on it, whether it's political or whatever. That was probably commissioned by the city or, sanctioned by this company.
Mm. Yeah, that was an interesting point because I think there's times where I've looked at stuff and just kind of like that like the words there's someone's little logo, that's a mural, but you've kind of all meshed it all together as the one thing. You know what I mean? So I thought it was intriguing when it was getting broken down and being like, yo, this is kind of this, and this was this, and back in the day we looked at it like this. Like, because we get to speak with people, but you also get that history. Like, was that an important thing when you were putting this together, that you wanted to intertwine the history and these insights so people had that understanding?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you have to kind of go back in the history book and see what was going on 30, 40 years ago to understand how it got to where it is today. Um, so yeah, like really going back and talking about kind of the early days with some of these guys, with Sloke and some of the other artists. And part of that too is a lot of these guys are you know, a little bit older and they've been in the game for 20 to 30 years or more, 30 to 40 years. And so they've kind of been around for a while and they've seen, change and progression and they've contributed a lot to it. Um, and so definitely having guys that, could, I guess, had the history behind it to show definitely helped in the film.
Yeah. No, I think that's a big one because they put the work in. You know what I mean? Because it's always interesting seeing that young up and coming kid. You know what I mean? That's like got that new style. But it's just like, yeah, that's fun, that's cool. But they've only been in it a minute, right? So, what's it like doing this on a regular basis? What's it like to go through all of those different things, to be arrested, to come from that era where it was looked upon as being defacement? So, like hearing from all of these guys, that was super interesting, you know?
Yeah, no, it was interesting for me too because I mean, yeah, I mean they have all been most of them been arrested for it and um, obviously been undervalued and looked down upon for being vandals and that's changed a lot and now it's kind of like completely flipped the script and now these guys are looked at as you know leaders and like prominent figures within the art world and I think from what I saw they're very well respected and they're not looked down upon anymore.
Mm, yeah, that was really interesting seeing that. Like,
Yeah.
how did you kind of come up with the structure of the documentary? Like, do you because I don't know, I haven't seen a whole heap of graffiti kind of street art document. I've seen like one or two.
Hmm.
I haven't seen a lot. So did you look at past things? Did you look at documentaries on other stuff and be like, I really like the way that one tells a story, like I want this to be like this? Or was it just this felt like the natural way to tell this story?
Yeah, no, that was great. Went through Amazon and found every graffiti film documentary that I could find, and watched it, and took little bits and pieces where I could, and basically just kind of saw that I something I didn't think was there, that really showed the current state,
Mm,
of the art forms, and so I really wanted to kind of go for that. As far as finding the story and the structure, I'd say one, it helped, a lot of Duel's philosophies kind of were heavily influenced on like conceptualizing and stuff like that. And really, I filmed with Duel for like almost 6 months before I even like started reaching out to other guys,
right.
and then from there I kind of conceptualized and built, kind of just like some question, like some interview based questions of where I kind of wanted the story to be and go, and I kind of just asked all the every artist the same questions, with a little difference between, I dove into 5 points with mirrors, and I dove into Castle Hill and the history behind that with Sloke, and so, but for the most part, I was kind of following a same idea that I wanted to basically convey, and that was, the duality of it, and the
Mm.
dual nature in graffiti, and how it's changed, and the perceptions changed, and how it's, yeah. I mean, and the dual philosophy just applies to so many different concepts within this film and in life, but especially in this film, I mean, 5 points, they flipped the script on, who's the vandal, right?
Yeah, that was, man, when you threw the 5 points thing
Yeah,
in, because I've not heard of anything like that. So that was just fascinating. And then that law, I was like, yo, what? There's this,
yeah,
like, I don't, and I think there's a lot of people would never have heard of that law, right? So this was,
yeah.
when I say this was so informative, like it truly was very interesting. For me, this was like the best thing on, graffiti and street art that I've seen, because it covered so many different aspects of it. Like some things cover like one little bit, but you
Uh-huh.
you delved into so much. We had these different points of view. Then you have things like Castle Hill and 5 points, which
Yeah,
just give you this other kind of perspective. You know what I mean?
no
It was
doubt.
great, man.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, I like I said, I really wanted to just do something in the graffiti doc space that hadn't been done, and hopefully I achieved it with this film. And yeah, like I said, really flipped the script on, or I tried to as much as possible, who's the vandal and who's not, especially in the case of 5 points, like,
Mm.
um, them winning the case in the Supreme Court. It was the first time that law was used, and the history behind it, is pretty interesting and fascinating. With,
Yeah, that whole Rockefeller, like
yeah,
stuff, which
back in the,
again, I never would have thought it'd gone that far, but that back. That was
yeah,
just like, wait, what?
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah. So yeah, in the 1930s, that's when you could say this all started.
Mm.
And obviously even before that,
Well,
the
Pompeii.
ruins,
Yeah.
Pompeii, the ruins. So I mean, you could say, it's this this art form has been around for a long, long time. I mean, you could almost say it's one of the longest art forms there is, if not the longest art form. Um, and so yeah, like it having the law be enacted was, I think, a huge win for some artists. When applied correctly,
Yeah.
I think it can really do a lot of good for the art community, and graffiti and street art as a whole.
Mm. Oh, for sure, for sure.
Uh,
Like growing up in like the suburbs, as you said, where there was no real graffiti or anything like that, to then going somewhere with it. Like for you, what is like the benefits? Because you know what I mean? I think there's so much that art brings to people. Yeah, I mean, it can really brighten up your day. Like, it can really change your outlook on things. Seeing some like incredible piece somewhere, you know, and art's so subjective. You know what I mean? Different styles, different takes. You know, black and white, color, just so much stuff, right?
Uh-huh.
But yeah, for you, what's it mean? Like,
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's almost like looking at the stars at night. You know, you're kind of just like in awe. You're like, man, how is that out there? How did they do that? Um, you know, it can obviously invoke different feelings in you. It could make you laugh, or it could make you angry. You know, or if it's a political message, it could also make you angry. You know, uh, uh, so I think there's just so much it can do, and just make you feel and make, inspire you and create this sense of like amazement. Um, it's really hard to put your finger on it, it's something you feel, and every piece kind of brings out a different feeling um, in you, and obviously it is subjective, so it has different effects on different people. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's just kind of like it just kind of makes you think, I guess. Makes you stop, look at it, and just be like, wow, that's incredible. Or that has a strong message. Or I disagree with that.
mm,
So I guess just the feeling it can bring out. Um,
yeah,
yeah.
I think like it adds like a different dimension to a city. You know, I remember going to Aberdeen once. I think they call it the Granite City. It's just grey as a motherfucker, right?
Yeah.
And it just felt like there was no color. It's a city that felt like it needs some street art and graffiti. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think you do notice a difference of going somewhere that just feels bleak, right?
Mhm.
Just gray, just empty. But then you go somewhere that has this incredible art, and there just feels like there's a little oomph, a little something. There's a different kind of soul to this spot, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, it, as Duel says it, a city with no graffiti is a city with no soul.
Yep.
I mean, he says it perfectly right there. Yeah, and it brings culture, it brings, it attracts people. It attracts, it kind of induces conversation. It induces, thoughts and feelings. And so it just, I mean, I think it really brings so much value to a city and to an area, and just it livens up the place. It makes you want to be there. It makes people, want to be there. Um, then obviously versus a city like you're talking about, it's just stone,
Yeah.
concrete. So I think it really it does so much for places
Mm.
that yeah, it's really incredible. And it's interesting that it is and can be illegal. um so yeah, just a interesting concept for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, I think showing that gallery towards the end was really interesting. And
Mhm.
the fact it all kind of sprung out of the 5 points incidents and everything like that. Was there ever a thought of maybe having someone from that hotel group on to talk about why they wanted to do it, their affinity to, this sort of art?
Yeah, are you specifically talking about the Bowery, the Citizen M Moza?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really cool piece. Yeah, that thought did I think we tried, but I think it was the owner who really sought out those artists and was a fan of Five Points. And when he opened that location in the Bowery there in Manhattan, he, wanted to pay tribute to that, and so he let 21 artists
Mm.
create that like um, stairwell walk down. And that was a really hard thing to film because it was so tight in there, and I mean, from the very top floor, which is floor 21, all the way to the bottom, it's just all paint. There's not a single spot that's left untouched. And just showing like how big it actually was kind of hard. And we kind of did the little time lapse as we were going down to show that. But yeah, it was a really cool tribute. And obviously New York has the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, right?
Yeah.
So this is what they're calling the Museum of Street Art. Um, and yeah, just a really cool concept. And yeah, I did. That probably wouldn't have been a good interview to have with um, the owner there. We just weren't able to get it, unfortunately.
Uh, I mean, I think it was all very well explained,
Yeah.
and the project and like what they wanted to do with it, and just all of that. It was just sometimes you wonder like, oh, what else could mirror up with this kind of stuff? You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah,
no,
absolutely.
it still worked. It still definitely worked.
Yeah, yeah. And I got to stay. That's where I stayed too when I was
Oh,
there.
nice.
Yeah, which is a cool. It's a cool little concept. They're very art driven and culturally driven little hotel concepts. And I actually stayed in one Seattle when we were up there a couple months ago too. And yeah, I do like their hotels.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's cool. It's
yeah.
cool. Like, you said it was difficult filming like that part of it. Were there, with doing this, were there different techniques that you haven't maybe used before that you incorporated, or different styles, ways of, you know, putting all of this together?
Yeah, yeah, I used a lot of gimbal shots, so motion with them. We used time lapse. Is that what you're referring to? Kind of the camera stuff?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, we did some time lapse stuff while they were painting, so it looks like they're just quickly painting this piece that really took 3 or 4 hours. Um, and then, we got a lot of archival footage from the guys too, which was hugely helpful to, fill the gaps and assist in telling the story. Um, and yeah, just trying to capture as much like the raw moments as possible. Like you see Sloke with, helping Charlie paint and stuff like that. Um, those moments happen quite a bit, and I don't think we got to include all of them in the film, but there's definitely some where, you see these guys going out and interacting with the general public, and, people coming up to them saying, "Hey, I've seen your work," all that. And and so we really just wanted to capture that kind of raw, um, in the moment, handheld type of stuff. Um, yeah, other than that, I mean, we had some drone shots. And yeah, the biggest thing I wanted to do, which looks super cool, and it's something that some other graffiti artists do on YouTube and stuff. But what they're basically, it's called a hyperlapse. So it's like a time lapse, but the camera's moving while in conjunction with time. So and it creates this really cool like three-dimensional time lapse effect. But they take so long to do.
Right, right.
So I mean, you literally sit there and you take a photo, and then you move like 6 inches, and they take another photo, and you move 6 inches, and then you move strategically in patterns that around the art piece that's being created, and you're doing that for 6, 8 hours, however long it's taken to do these murals. And so, but it creates such a cool effect. And there was a couple that um, we had archived, that was in the film, that like that very, it's kind of towards the end with Jabber when he's painting in that I don't even know what you call it, like retaining wall that has kind of the stone walkway, and it kind of shows
Oh,
them as they're painting, and it kind of orbits around them, and then it kind of goes through as they're painting, and then it goes to
mm,
the other side. Well, so that was the stuff I wish I could have done more of. Um, it was just more of a thing of time um, and
yeah.
budget. So
Okay, it sounds kind of like stop motion, which is like crazy. I didn't really think that. Yeah, that was yeah, you could do that. Interesting.
yeah, very similar. Yeah,
Oh man.
yeah,
Man, yeah, that's yeah, so interesting, man. Like
yeah,
what you know what I mean? Because filming, right? Like you've done corporate videos and everything like that, but like to do like this feature documentary, like did you kind of envision everything that it would take, like these new techniques, like these new ways of telling story in such this scale? Like, has it did it go how you thought it might, or was this completely like I wasn't expecting this shit?
yeah. I mean, I would say it went what I had, what I had in my mind and what I was able to actually create as a tangible item. I think was actually very close, and that's
Okay.
kind of what we call like the creative gap. Narrowing that gap of what you see in your
Mm,
mind to what actually is produced. Um, and I think it actually was pretty close. Considering, it was my first feature, um, had limited time, limited budget, stuff like that. So, you know, with the next one, I can definitely take that foundation, expand on it, and hopefully, have better effects and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, I kind of really came down to time and budget, really, I would say.
right, right. I mean, the time thing is a little crazy because you're a fireman, man. Like, how do you this with a job like that where you could get called out to do like how how do you structure a day to do something, you know what I mean, to create something like this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I always forget about that piece, or a lot of people just don't know. But yeah, I am a fireman full time here in the Austin area, and I mean, I'm just so thankful that job just allows you the time off. I mean, we work 2 days on, and then we have 4 days off. So I mean, I really have. It's almost, like every week I work 2 days, so I still have a ton of time to pursue passion projects and other things like this. And with this film specifically, I did the bulk of filming in November and December of 2020, and I did a lot of pre-production, and I really planned out those shoots way in advance, and I planned
Mm.
out some time off from the fire department. So I took about a month off, and I just went and filmed for a month straight, and and then came back and you know was able to cut it into a feature length doc from there. So yeah, I
Okay.
definitely took a little time off, but yeah, I mean it's definitely pretty incredible that I have that opportunity and freedom to take time off and go do projects like this.
Mm. Yeah, two very different and crazy careers there, my friend.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. They're completely opposite. Yeah,
Like, what was the thing that got you? Because you know, looking at your bio, you're a veteran as well, man. So, what was the thing that kind of made you want to tell visual stories? Right? What kind of got you intrigued by that, and what kind of made you think that this is something I can do?
yeah. That's a good question too. I think I enjoy just experiencing different like experiences almost. And with documentaries especially, you can like embed yourself with a certain group of people or whatever it may be, a certain profession or a certain industry or whatever, and you kind of experience what it's like for them to
Mm.
be a graffiti writer or, be an athlete or whatever the topic is that you're covering. And so I think it comes down to experience, like the experience you get. Um, I think that's kind of really where I fell in love and grew a passion for documentary films, especially, and they're real stories, so people can relate because it's real and people have gone through it. So
That's true. That's true. But Ryan, I gotta say, I don't think everyone can do that shit. Right? It's just like, look, there's fundamental things that people can do, right? I could go out there and pick up a camera, right? I mean, now with the way phones are, you could use your phone to film something, right?
that is
But
true.
where it gets interesting is being able to craft it, right? Because
Mhm.
getting all of these cats to be that open with you, like that's a skill, right? Not everyone can get someone to open up and really just tell everything,
Mhm.
and you had Jabba talking about, being arrested and just all of this crazy shit. Like they're talking about stuff, and you'd be like, yo, what's the statute of limitations, man? Like, you know what I mean? Could this be
Yeah,
evidence? Like, what's happening? But they're opening up,
right.
they're talking to you, which is, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I mean. Like, that takes a different something, So, like, where did that come from? You know what I mean? Where did you perfect that? Like, or is it something you felt you've always had? Like, where have you been in the mess? You know what I mean? In the army or in the station, and you're telling stories, and be like, "No, yo, Ryan's got stories, man. Like, Ryan can do shit." Like, is that the thing, or was it like through conversations with other directors and be like, "Yo, how do you do this thing?" And you just, perfect, perfect, perfect.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think creativity is like a muscle, you got to exercise it. Um, and I think with longer films, I think it allows you to get into a concept and really exercise it more. And I mean, I wrote out, kind of what I wanted the film to look like, and I envisioned basically the whole thing kind of beforehand, before I filmed and before I went and did, conducted the interviews, and so I really just it really started just kind of in my head, and I tried to put everything down on paper that I could, and from there, getting the information out of the subject is one, I think it requires some preparation, and two, I mean, I tried to establish rapport with them beforehand, and honestly, I almost do like a whole interview before I even bring the camera out, and
Mm,
just make sure they know what they're gonna say, make sure they know where I'm trying to go with this, see what they have to say, see if their story kind of lines up, and and then from there, it's really just kind of guiding them almost in an interview and down the right path, and asking certain questions to get certain responses, because I don't want to put words in their mouth,
yeah.
but there's things where I'm like, this is what I would like you to say in regards to certain things. So, and then, there's good ways of doing that. And so, yeah, I mean, really, when you get in the interview, be open, I have a set of guidelines and questions that I go off of, but then kind of be open to whatever comes your way. And really, a lot of the times, what happens in the interview is you kind of, they get to reminiscing, they get to thinking, and that's when you kind of get an emotional buildup, and you can kind of, just be very attentive and, listen, and kind of just allow them to express themselves, and kind of help them guide in a certain direction, I guess. And a lot of guys will say that, doing an interview session is like a therapy session, because you're talking about the past, you're bringing up certain emotions, you're, kind of reminiscing, and it just kind of all floods and hits you at once. And yeah, some of it's just kind of a natural process in a sense of, you know, sitting down and doing an interview and knowing that this is your story and it's going to be told, on film and stuff like that. So some people can get, nervous in front of the camera, but um, I try and really just make it conversational, kind of like this is, like let's just talk, look at me, we're gonna have a conversation. Gonna ask you some questions. Feel free to answer as openly as possible. And so yeah, I mean that really just kind of helps guide the story. And I really, like I said, I had it all kind of planned beforehand. Really in the pre-production phase is where all that kind of comes together.
Okay. Okay. So are you storyboarding or are you kind of writing it out, like mind mapping? Like how does the structure work for you to be able to kind of have this plan to move with?
Yeah, I have done a couple things in the past. Like, yeah, sort of like storyboarding. Obviously, storyboarding is like this is the exact shot we need. This is the exact shot we need. With documentaries, it's more of like let's figure out the storyline. Let's figure out the story arc. Where's the conflict? You know what what's being told here. Um, and so really, like I said, the interview is kind of the narrative portion. So you really got to lay that out, make sure, you're intentional with your questions, and then, planning on what to shoot from there that co-aligns with what they're saying, and obviously co-aligns with the film or with the story and stuff like that. And there's an app or it's not an app, it's a software that I use to kind of create different scenes and write them out, and I can attach pictures of screen grabs from a film or the film you're
Okay.
working on. And so I like the visual piece, and
Mm,
so I'll if I film a scene, then I'll kind of bring in some of those screen grabs, and then I'll type, um, what that scene is about, like what the feel of the scene is, how it relates to the story, and from there you can kind of piece together like in a sense, a three-act structure with with documentary. And so I definitely use some tools, and I write a lot of things down, and I try and stay as organized and as possible when it comes to kind of crafting the story.
mm.
Yeah.
Where did that come from, man? Like, did you just teach it to yourself? Is it for, do you watch like those inside the director guild kind of things? Like, yeah, how did you kind of learn the process that would work for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, so one would be watching film. Um, I watched a ton of film. I mean, I love film, obviously. Um, and so when I'm in my research phase or whatever you want to call it, conceptual phase, um, then I'm watching related films. So I'm seeing what they did. I'm seeing how they told the stories, what their intention was, and so obviously just viewing viewing films in a different light. Not like it's almost like the books like Steal Like an Artist. Like seeing what they're doing, seeing what works for them, and then maybe taking a little bit and seeing how I can take it, spin it a little bit differently.
Mm, mm,
Um, that and then yeah, I definitely like to attend film festivals, talk to directors, pick their brains, um, and see how they approach story, and how they approach kind of the intentions behind their story or their films and stuff like that. So definitely attending film festivals, um, and things of that nature. And honestly, there's good content on YouTube that you can find from other filmmakers and other directors that lay out their process, and that's been a huge help as well. So it's kind of been a mixture a couple of different things and just kind of doing it for yourself and seeing what works for you, basically. Because everyone's kind of got a different process of doing it.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's the thing, right? Like the amount of conversations and especially recently, I've yeah looked at ton of different documentaries, speaking with people about what they did, how they did it. It's always different. It's always
Yeah.
different. So it's so interesting, right?
Uh-huh.
Because you think, oh yeah, no, that sounds exactly how you would do it. Then someone else
Right.
says this other thing, you'd be like, yeah, no, that sounds real valid, right? And it's
Yeah.
just like, whoa, there's so many different like ways to do this. It's very intriguing, and I think that's where when you get something like duality, it's very interesting to see the approach. You know what I mean? How it was all put together because it's different to I spoke to a young lady recently, Vivian Winthrup, whose documentary comes out next week, The Last of the Winthrups. And yeah, the way they put that together, very different. But they
Yeah.
both like both of these things, they work in these different ways. They're both compelling to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it is very interesting too to see how people kind of work and the minds behind it because it really is vision driven, I think, for a lot of people and especially for me, I kind of like almost like fantasize about what it could look like and almost as if I'm like watching it in my head, and seeing scenes play out and like what they would say and how can I take that and like transfer it over to um, an actual film screen, And
Mm,
so yeah, the process behind different creative minds is definitely very intriguing to me as well. And I think, I mean, there's so many different ways, and the story is also the topic, I guess, or whatever the character and the subject that you're covering will also dictate that a lot, Um, like this one kind of just, it almost felt like a natural thing that just kind of happened. It never felt forced. It never felt like I was trying to go after something that wasn't there. It almost that first interview that I had with Duel, it kind of just all clicked there, and then it just kind of fell into place.
right. Man, yeah. Yeah, like what kind of keeps you motivated? Like, do you do anything? Do you throw yourself into like particular things to keep, in those creative juices moving?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I watch a lot of films still. Um, I love going to film festivals and stuff like that, like I said. So that just continuing to, watch film from, like I said, from a different perspective though, from a perspective of let me like reverse engineer what they just did and
Mm,
see how I can pick it apart and like and how they created that or how, you know, they got that response from that character or how did you get that, um, soundbite from him or and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where you're kind of a student to the craft and constantly learning, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. So you just kind of got to figure out your own process and make it work for you.
mm. And with this, right? So it just kind of came together. Was there any thought of like how will this be received? Right? Like, is there particular things I need to include so people will gel with it? Like, or what, or do you kind of, when creating kind of these things, think what compels me? Like, what do I want to see in a good story, in a documentary? Like, yeah, what's the viewpoint around that kind of thing?
Yeah, the, definitely. obviously I want to be proud of it, right? So I want it to be something that I would like to watch, and one thing that I kind of made sure was that I got everything right, that I wasn't like incorrect about certain um, definitions and stuff like that within the uh, the graffiti world and stuff, because I was still learning so much, what the difference between all of it was. And so I think that was a big thing, was making sure everything was right. Um, and was announced correctly, and or I guess relayed correctly. And then yeah, perception. I mean, there was actually a like a marketing thing, like a little video that I cut together um, before I did the bulk of the filming. And I kind of look back now that I learned more after I'd filmed more, and realized that there was some things wrong with it, and it kind of got a lot of negative feedback, because I mean, you know how people are online. But
Yeah.
yeah. So I definitely got some trolls on that one, but it kind of made me realize, like, yeah, I didn't really convey the graffiti world correctly, and so maybe that was warranted. And and going forward, I was like, I really need to make sure I get this correct, and obviously for the sake of the artist and the sake of the art form. So
Okay. And now it's done, right? Like it's finally out in the world. Like, firstly, how does that feel, right? Knowing that people are consuming your work now, like this vision.
yeah, it's different. It's a feeling I've never really felt before, because I haven't had anything on this scale kind of go out there. But obviously it feels good. Like it feels more or less like a weight's been lifted, you know. But I mean, at the same time, I also really enjoyed the whole process of it. Um, but it feels good that, I was able to get something out there and for people to watch, and that it's seems like it's getting perceived somewhat well, and so yeah, I'm really just appreciative of that. And yeah, I mean, it took almost 3 years, so it was a long process.
Mm. Yeah, that's a big it's a big chunk of time, right? And I think sometimes people see things and think it just happens, right? Like, well, what did they just film it last month? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They people don't always appreciate all the time. And there's the filming, there's pre-production, the filming, post-production, like there's so many elements,
hmm Yeah,
so
it's like a huge puzzle piece, you know. You just kind of gotta align them all correctly until it makes sense and it flows well, and I mean, I think that's what film is just a giant puzzle piece, and making sure you're getting good footage to the editor so he can assemble that puzzle correctly. And
yeah.
it's I mean, it's a tremendous amount of work for sure. No doubt. It's been almost a full-time job for 3 years. So yeah.
Are you enjoying the festival circuit?
Yeah, we didn't do a big festival circuit. When we were applying for festivals was 20 the end of 2020, 2021.
Right,
Um
right.
and That was kind of the 2021. It was kind of the year that everything started opening back up, with COVID, and it seemed like the festivals were just getting inundated with films, and there was just backlogs of films
Mm.
waiting to get out there. And so the competition seemed to be pretty steep, and we really, you know, at that point, I didn't have a whole lot of money left. And so unfortunately, yeah, we couldn't do a huge festival circuit. And so unfortunately, I really would have liked to have done a more thorough festival circuit. But yeah, I mean, we applied to quite a few, and it just unfortunately didn't get accepted to most of them, or all of them.
Yeah. Well, I
So
mean, it's their loss, really.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah,
It's their loss, man.
yeah, yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah, I think at face value, people kind of are like, huh, graffiti, they kind of dismiss it, and then they
Mm,
actually watch it and they're like, oh wow, that's not what I expected. It's it's different and it's a lot more intricate and involved than I was expecting. It seems to be the response I'm getting. And they just didn't realize how much was in that world and how diverse it was, and how much history and story is really actually there. They just kind of see it and they're like, ah, it's just some thugs doing you know artwork on the streets. But yeah, it's just so much more than that.
mm. Yeah, I think like I've got a few friends that are like, you know, filmmakers, and I've
Uh,
got one of my friends, Cindy, she's a sculpture. And I love talking to them about creating. Like, see, 'cause Cindy, she was using clay to sculpt, and she's recently started using porcelain. And so it's really intriguing seeing like these different effects and new styles, and the way the paint now sits on this surface. And so it's always like, yo, how did you get that effect? And yo, tell me about that. So that was one of the things of your documentary, like hearing these different techniques, the way they, were using different things. And over time, when people are like, yeah, so when you're on the street, you just do it quickly, but then over time you can do it this way and that way. And it's just like, whoa, that's crazy. Yeah, that's real interesting.
yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Yeah, there's so many different varieties and ways to get your name out there, and yeah, I mean, it's creativity rules. I mean, however
Mm,
you want to do it.
yeah, no, definitely. Like, what do you what do you do with the documentary now? You know what I mean? Are you still looking to get it into certain spaces? You're gonna get a viewing in MoMA. It's like, yo, like, what are you trying to do with it now?
Yeah, I mean, we got a couple of screenings just around here that we're gonna do in Austin. Um, and then I think they're trying to get it at Art Basel down in
Okay.
Miami. Um, there were in talks with Marie from the film. Um, she's gonna be doing some exhibit there, and so she's pushing for it to get screened down there. And yeah, I mean, really at this point, it's just about getting the word out there and getting people to see it and get some feedback and stuff like that. So from now on, from here forward, it's really just getting it out to the masses and trying to get people to watch it. So a lot of marketing and PR and stuff.
Right, right. Well, I mean, you've got the a great person to help you with that. AJ is a
Yeah,
legend, and
she
yeah,
she's been
you
great. Yeah,
person, man.
yeah, no doubt. She's definitely gotten some really awesome articles written about the film and definitely created some buzz around it for sure. So definitely glad to have her on board.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I can imagine. And
Yeah.
any thoughts of what you might do next, or
Yeah, actually, I it's kind of hip hop related as well.
oh,
And
okay.
it's still in taught and still completely, pre um, pre-conceptualized, but it would be following a um, a breakdancer or a former breakdancer, one that kind of kind of similar to Duality, one that has been in the breakdancing world for a long time and helped to evolve it as a sport. And as you may or may not know, breakdancing is going to be in the Olympics in 2024 in Paris. And so, the hope is to kind of watch him on the journey to Paris and
Oh
see
shit.
see how goes and that'll be groundbreaking in its own because it'll be the first time that breakdancing also kind of a underground,
Mm,
subculture type of sport, if you want to call it, or dance style, is now to be an Olympic sport, and these guys can call themselves Olympians. And
Yeah.
so yeah, well, excited to see where that one goes. Still don't quite know. Um,
Okay.
but I have about 2 years of footage on that one already. And other than that, I mean, I'm kind of just searching for something that I'd want to tell and I'd be interested in. It is kind of hard to find these stories to tell, and people who want to be on camera and they want to have a film crew around them.
Mm.
So that search is something I haven't quite mastered yet, but it's kind of an interesting one of how to find story subjects,
Mm.
because they're not always coming to you. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to seek them out is something I'm currently working on.
Okay. Well, I mean, the breakdown, yo, yeah, you definitely got me hooked. You definitely got me
Yeah,
hooked with that. That
right.
sounds real. And the real interesting thing with breakdancing as well, like a lot of those cats transitioned over to jujitsu and are doing real well in the
I
jujitsu
bet.
well. Like
Yeah.
there's like a Boogie Martinez, um,
Uh-huh.
who's like really good, and his brother. Oh man, I forget his brother's name. Ah, god damn. But his brother beat Eddie Cummings in EBI
Uh,
like
yeah.
back a few years back, and it was just like incredible. And yeah,
Uh-huh.
you've got a lot of the break dancers of kind of yeah doing real well in the jujitsu world, man.
Yeah, I mean they're athletes. I mean it's kind of similar to gymnastics, right?
Mm,
I mean they're acrobats. I mean the stuff they're doing is very high level now, and it's I mean it takes years of training. So it's definitely kind of like the graffiti. It's a sport that's evolved, and the competition base is a lot fiercer than it was, and there's more people out there wanting to do it, and there's guys that are starting young and training early, and training throughout their youth to become really, really good. And I mean, yeah, like I said, they're full on athletes. They can jump up in the air, twist on their head, do flips, all sorts of crazy acrobatic things. And I think it'll be cool to bring that to light as well, because that's something that isn't really on a worldwide stage yet, I don't think. So it'll be cool to see kind of how it goes down in Paris in 2024 and on an Olympic level.
yeah, I'm definitely intrigued on how are they gonna judge it, right? Because
Yeah,
when rock climbing went across, I think they judge it's slightly different to how you might judge it in a normal kind of rock climbing competition type of thing. So it's like, yeah, how are they gonna view it? Are they gonna run it like the DMCs or you know what I mean, something like that? Yeah, it's yeah, it's interesting. It's real
it
interesting.
is. And I've been seeing, some competitions or ciphers um, here in Austin and here in the Texas area. And yeah, I mean it's like like how do they judge gymnastics, right? It's almost like there's a subjective component, even though
Mm,
there is some objective components like, oh, he did a double 360 cork to double X spin. So I think they're establishing certain moves and the difficulty level of some, and then there's other elements too, like the stage presence you bring,
mm.
the attitude you have, the energy, and how you react to like having your opponent bust a really hard move. Do you respond to that, or so there's definitely a both components, I would say. But it
Yes.
will be interesting. It will be interesting.
Yeah, because the response, that's a big part of it. Like, you know what I mean? The
Yes,
comeback. And it's just like, yeah, so how do you put that on the Olympic? You know what I mean? Yeah, how do you craft it for that stage? And also the
right.
music.
Yeah, I mean, definitely got good DJs in there, spinning some beats and yeah, I mean, having good DJs is a part of it. like I said, it kind of goes into the four elements of hip hop, you know, the emceeing, the DJing, the graffiti,
Mm.
uh, and so yeah, it kind of brings it all together, and obviously you know you get a crowd response, and that goes crazy when something happens, and it's almost like a feeling you get like, I think they just felt more dominance,
Yeah.
you know. So it will be interesting. Will be interesting to see.
Oh yeah, that could be the most lit aspect of the Olympics, man. Like if they
Yeah,
do that correctly, whoo, that'll be
yeah.
impressive.
Well, some of these battles though, they get pretty intense, and they, you know, like it just gets insane, and these guys are going all out, and the intensity's there, and the fire and all that, and so
Mm.
it'll definitely be interesting to see kind of how that all plays out.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's something I will probably definitely try and go check because Paris. All I have to do is jump on the Eurostar and I'm there. So
Yeah,
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 Could-
yeah. You're
it
close
could be
by.
fun.
You're in London, is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Nice, awesome. Well,
Uh,
I mean, well, hopefully I can try and find a way to be there. But we'll see.
yeah, man. Yeah, I hope all this comes together because yeah, I want to watch it now.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, I really like. What's the scene like in Austin, Texas, and
yeah. As far as breakdancing,
yeah, and like
I'd say it's
rap and all of that kind of stuff.
I'd say it's good. I'm not too familiar with the rap game, but I know the breakdancing game is pretty it's great. Um, there's a there's a big they just did the big Red Bull BC1 Cypher here in Austin. You know,
Okay.
sold out the Moody Theater, which is our big theater downtown here. Um, you know, where all the big musical acts come. So I mean, they're the stage they're at, and the arenas that they're getting into are starting to get pretty big in size
Mm,
for sure. And I mean, you could definitely see how many people were in attendance. Like it's a couple thousand were in the crowd. So I mean, it's getting a lot bigger for sure. And there's some big competitions now, and there's the the BC1 tours around the world actually. So they have competitions all over, and I know Europe has some pretty good teams. Um, but yeah, I mean the competition seems to be ramping up pretty drastically in preparation for the Olympics. So, and on Austin, it's here as big as it is anywhere else in the world, I'd say.
right.
So,
Nice.
yeah, yeah, it's
Man,
pretty cool to watch. Yeah,
yeah. That's boy. Yeah, there's a lot going. Like, it's a lot
yeah,
happening. Like, you know what I mean? You've got the breaking. You've got
yeah.
the street art graffiti. You've got the filmmaking. Because isn't that where Richard Linklater started?
I believe he was in Austin.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And now the comedy scene is like
yeah,
blowing up. God damn, it
yeah.
sounds like it's a place to be, man.
It yeah, it actually is. If you think about it from a creative sense, it definitely is it's a it's a happening spot right now for sure.
Mm,
So and I'm fortunate to be in a spot like that presents opportunities.
yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, when people see duality, yo, you've definitely carved out your corner, man. People are gonna take notice. So, man, yeah, I really appreciate this time, man. Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah,
It's really great talking to you about all of this.
yeah, no, thank you, Kevin. You had some good questions, and I appreciate you having me on the show. Yeah, it's
And
good talk. Enjoyed it.
cool, man. Well, hey, once the next thing is ready, man, please come by and let's do this again.
For sure, we'll do. I'll tell AJ, hey, I need to talk to Kevin again. Got to do work.
Nice, nice. Now, yo, let everyone know where they can view the doc and follow you and everything that's going down.
absolutely. So it is streaming on Amazon Prime. It's also streaming on Apple TV and iTunes. It's on Vudu as well and Google Play, including YouTube movies. And so yeah, you can search Duality Graffiti Story and it'll pop right up. You can follow the film on Instagram at Duality Official Film. Um, we post pretty regularly on there. Micro stories and little videos and photos throughout production that you can kind of see some behind the scenes stuff of. And yeah,
Cool, cool. And I think the one question I forgot to ask you, Ryan, and
yeah,
everyone will probably want to know, what's your tag, man?
yeah. My tag is just my name, Ryan.Dowling. Yeah, at Ryan.Dowling. So if you can find the film page, then I put the my tag in the description, so you can find me through there.
Awesome. Like everything will be on the website so people can,
Yeah,
just go to the page and find all the links. But
yeah,
definitely people go check out the documentary. It is, man, it's so interesting. And it gives you that real crazy insight into all of this. Because like it says at the start, this stuff it's been around since Pompeii. Actually, it's probably been around longer, right? Cave painting is essentially graffiti.
exactly. Yeah,
So,
yep.
this is like the oldest art form,
It,
right? It's crazy.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, no doubt. It's been around for a long time, and so yeah, I hope you can gain some insight from it and kind of just learn more about it.
Mm, yeah. And yeah, so people check it out. Follow Ryan because you'll want to fight. I mean, I want to see this breakdancing thing. So I'm sure there's gonna be stuff about that. So do that. Show my man some love. Ryan, thank you so much for your time. This has been great. Really has.
Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you, Kevin. I really appreciate it. Can't tell you how much I appreciate it.
Hey, no worries, man. No
Yeah.
worries. All right. Yeah, I'll send you the links once it's live. It will be going live maybe tomorrow or Friday. But
Okay, awesome.
yeah.
Cool. So
All
we're
right.
cut off the air now.
Not yet. We're going now. All right.
Okay.
Thanks, Ryan. Catch you
Okay.
later.
Okay. Bye.